Hello and welcome. This is a quick video to show you all the options with LoopTools in Blender 5.2 and beyond. Let's first of all go up to the top left here into Edit and go into Preferences, Add-ons, type in Loop and ensure that this check is enabled, and then you want to close this again. You can access the LoopTools in two different ways. You can click on a mesh, head in Edit mode, right click, and then at the top you will have the LoopTools, or you can press N to open up the side panel. Make sure you go into the Edit tab, and then you will have the LoopTools, and here are all the options to be used as well. First up, we have the Bridge tool, which is very simple. We're going to take these two cubes here. I'm going to select these four faces, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. Right click, LoopTools, Bridge, and this is just literally going to create a bridge. Now we have this settings panel at the bottom right here. We can increase the segments, which is just going to change the amount of loop cuts in between on the bridge. We can change the twist, which will literally twist it. This is very niche. I mean, you need enough geometry to make this work. Then we have the strength, which will just make the bridge thinner or wider. So if you turn this up, it will kind of suck it in. And if you turn this into the negatives, you will get this ballooning effect. One thing to keep in mind with this tool is that you do need the same amount of vertices when connecting. So if we grab the inside faces here, you can see we have a lot more faces than we do on this side. We'll take these four faces here, right click, LoopTools, Bridge. You will see initially, if we set all of this back to normal, that this is totally fine. Like, this looks kind of fine, but the problem is, of course, that we have way more vertices on this side than on this side, and these are all connecting into the same vert, which is going to cause problems in a lot of cases. Then one more important thing to note is that we also need to make sure that these are the same object. So here we can see we have two cubes, but these are not the same object. If we select both of them and tab into edit mode, we can, of course, access their geometry. So if I grab these four and grab these four and I right click LoopTools Bridge, I would expect it to work, but it doesn't. So this is pretty important to note. So if you have these two objects, what I would do is just grab them, Control J to turn them into one object. Then you have these two selected, you bridge them, and now it works perfectly fine. Next up, we have the circle tool, which is arguably the most famous part of LoopTools. We're going to go into this plane here. I'm going to make sure that we have enough geometry. So I'm going to right click, subdivide, and Shift R to repeat that a couple times. I'm going to grab a bunch of these faces. I'm going to right click, LoopTools, circle, and that's going to give you a circle. The more geometry you have, the more circular it'll be, of course, but you can always just use a subdivide to make it more circular. That's completely fine. And this does, of course, also work on cubes or any other geometry. So I'm going to grab this face. I'm going to right click to subdivide, Shift R to repeat that a couple times. And it is actually recommended, if you want to protect your geometry around it, to just go ahead and quickly inset. So I'm going to press I to inset and then right click, LoopTools, circle. And now we have our little circle right here. We can scale this up, we can rotate this, and then we can go ahead and extrude this inward, and that's that. Next up, we have the curve tool, which is also incredibly useful. I'm going to tab in here and I'm going to in vertex select some of these vertices right here. I'm going to move them up a little bit and then right click, LoopTools, curve, and there you have a nice curvature. It is important to note that this wouldn't work if you use these like edges here, so the vertices on the edge. So if we lift these up and then we right click, LoopTools, curve, you will see that it will just lift all the vertices up to where these are. So this definitely has its uses as well, but it doesn't actually create the curve. This does, of course, also work with edges. So let's come to this one right here and go into edge select instead by pressing 2 on the keyboard or going up here. We're going to select 2 inner edges. Again, not the corners. Make sure it's an inner edge. G, Z to move those up. I'm going to right click, LoopTools, curve, and you're going to get this nice curvature, kind of like a tombstone. This has a lot of uses, specifically to replace or be a substitute to proportional editing. For example, if we grab this inner here, we press O to turn on proportional editing, and G, Z, you can kind of get a similar result, but you will immediately affect the bottom here too, and that's why the curve tool is incredibly useful. Similarly to the other loop tools, if we use the curve tool, we will get a settings panel right here. If we change cubic to linear, you will no longer have your curvature, so keep this on cubic. Restriction is generally useless for most purposes. Boundaries, if you turn this on, then this will basically mean that your selection will be the highest point of the curve, so that will basically just remove your apex here. I also tend to keep this off. Regular won't do anything unless you have boundaries on, so if you now flip this, you could see that it's kind of like straightening the edges. So if you do have boundaries on, it's nice to keep that on. And then the influence just basically controls the strength of the curve. This is very straightforward. Next up, we have the flatten tool, which is about as simple as it sounds. I'm going to go into this plane, and you can see that this plane has a lot of geometry. With proportional editing on, I'm going to make a little mound here. Now I'm going to select everything, right click, LoopTools, flatten, and there we go. Our plane is flat again. We can of course also do the same thing with curved surfaces. So if we go ahead and select some faces on this UV sphere, right click, Loop Tools, flatten, we will flatten part of this right here. We can change the settings from best fit to the normals of the UV sphere or the view, which is literally from where we are viewing it, which is rarely useful. Usually the best fit is the best fit. And then the influence will just once again influence the strength of the effect. Next up, we have G-stretch, which can be very useful to straighten out edges. So if we tab into this cube, you can see that we have a very janky edge right here. So let's right click, Loop Tools, G-stretch, and that's going to straighten that edge right here. It is of course going to affect your other geometry, so keep that in mind. Because it straightens out edges, we can also use this to cut through spheres. So we can go ahead and grab edge select, grab one vertex right here, hold control, grab the other. That's going to pick the shortest path. And then we can go ahead and right click, Loop Tools, G stretch, and it's going to cut right through. It's not the best topology, but it can be helpful in certain situations. In the settings, I recommend keeping the method to spread, and the influence once again just works the same way, which, controls the strength of the effect. If you watch older videos about the loop tools, you might see someone talk about G-stretch having this annotation feature where you can draw a line and then basically connect mesh to it. It will send you to this menu right here. If you press N into edit, the use guide here is usually set to none, but if you change this to annotation, then you could technically do this. But in later versions of Blender, I believe Blender 4 and onwards, this has been broken and I don't think this has been fixed. So G-stretch doesn't work this way anymore as far as I'm concerned. If you know of a way to fix this, then please leave a comment and I'll pin your comment so people can see it. I so far haven't found anything. I have found bug reports that haven't seemingly been marked as fixed. So anyway, next up we have Loft, which is actually very similar to the first loop tool we looked at, Bridge. So I'll show you another function. This is a function that Loft has, but Bridge can do this too. So if we select these faces, we come around and we select the same faces on the other side. We can right click, Loop Tools, Loft, and that will connect inside here. You can change the segments. It says Bridge Loft because the settings panel is the exact same, so we won't go over it again. What Loft can do that Bridge cannot do is if we have a bunch of edge rings like here, or we have edge loops, you can do it with square ones as well. It doesn't have to be circles. You right click, Loop Tools, Loft, and this will connect them kind of like a pipe. I don't use this that often, but hey, maybe you can find a use for it. But regardless, now you know how it works. Our second to last loop tool is the Relax tool, and this works basically like a subdivision. So if we select all of our points here, we go into Edit on the side to open our Loop Tools panel, and we press Relax. You will see that it will just, the more we press this, the more it will kind of subdivide it together. It's not as good as a subdivision in my opinion, but you can do multiple iterations at a time. It works better with a mesh like this. So for example, if we go in Edge Select and we grab this edge right here and we try to relax it, you will see that this kind of like smooths this out. Now this is a little bit too much, so let's set the iterations to something like 5, and you will see that if we undo this, this will basically make this a lot more rounded. And here we have our last loop tool called Space. So this is very useful if you want to clean up topology. If I go into front view here for a moment and I extrude this out, you can see that we've got a nice pillar, but none of this is even. So if you want to make sure that these are evenly spaced apart, just go into Edge Select, Alt select these loops right here, select all your edges, and then just go ahead and right click, Loop Tools, Space, and that will evenly space these out. Once again, the influence, you can use this to kind of, to determine how much it should actually affect the geometry. And that was a quick rundown of all the loop tools in Blender. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Love you.